Okay, folks, believe it or not, I've been at Court TV a long, long time. And the longer I'm here, things just happen that shock me because I go back in time. I'm sitting here today and I am 1000% convinced that the Menendez brothers will be going free. Hear me. The Menendez brothers will be going free. Welcome to the Tangent Podcast. I'm Vinny Politan, along with Al Wunsch and Cardboard Jonesy, and this is the Tangent Podcast.
Vinny and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast. Vinny has the blue eyes, Al cracks the jokes. Jonesy stays behind his shades, entertaining all the folks. It's Vinny and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast. Load up all your comments, hit those super chats. Let's go smash that like button, so we can all have a blast. Vinny, Al, and Jonesy on the job. They're the Sugar Hill gang of true crime. They're telling stories of days gone by. They take crime and turn into a good old time. It's Vinny and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast.
All right, folks, here we go. Here we are on another Friday. Great to have everyone aboard. And yes, this is my headline. I'm going to take you through the process from my perspective on why I believe the Menendez brothers will be going free. Al may or may not agree with me, but great to have you aboard. Al, how you doing today?
Well, Mets won yesterday, so I'm in a very, very good mood, although a little hoarse from screaming like a lunatic at my television set, which when, of course, the Mets took the lead and finally won in this game, thanks to an incredible home run and an incredible moment. But other than that, doing okay. Whatchamacallit, just missing Jonesy. I'm glad we have the Cardboard Jonesy, though.
Cardboard Jonesy's with us no matter what. So the show must go on.
Is it true that he's basically, because of the strike going on with the dock workers, he feels solidarity with them, and that's why he's not here today? Is that
yeah? Oh, he's a union guy. He's not going to cross the line. Jonesy does not cross. No. Jonesy does not cross the line, folks.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. And and I heard we're close to getting that strike over, and let's hope that that's done. Absolutely. And then we get Jonesy back.
And hopefully toilet paper will be back on the shelves.
Yes, very much. It's very much important. But the Menendez brothers. Now, this is not the senator, right? You're not talking about him.
No. These are Eric and Lyle. These two guys who committed double red rum. Their mother and father back in the 90s. It was the first big trial on Court TV, like the first mega trial on Court TV, because it preceded OJ. But at their first trial, they had two juries, one for each brother. One trial, two juries. Neither jury could reach a verdict. And it came down on gender lines. The men were voting guilty, and the women were thinking that it was manslaughter, which was a much less of a charge, which they would be free by now, because I think the max was like 20 on that. So that's where we are. Really a historical trial for Court TV.
Well, it was very interesting trial, and I'm looking forward to getting into it and talking to you about this. But you know what, Vin? I think that there's some things that have happened in this date of October 4th.
Civil War to civil rights and all the revolution fights. World War I and World War II. I'll always knows who is who. It's this day in history. This day in history. History. Now let's listen to his story.
All right, what do you got for us today, Al?
Well, I gotta tell you, every time I hear that song, it just makes me hate history. I will just say that right now. So that let's go with that. All right. So on this day in 1993, it was the final day of the Battle of Mogadishu, which you may remember in the movie Black Hawk Down,
Oh
where the
yes.
American troops went in to get these drug warlords and got basically surrounded by the Somalians and had to fight their way out. Lost a lot of men. A very, very tragic battle in which there were two Medal of Honors that were awarded posthumously to two special services men that went in to try to rescue some of the a downed pilot. There was a pilot who was captured, tortured, and eventually released. But it was a very, if you ever get a chance to see that movie, it is very well recommended. I had the opportunity of meeting a number of individuals who were involved in that battle and interviewing them when I was on WOR.
Oh wow.
And it's just a very gut wrenching situation.
Hero.
And just, it shows you the true fortitude of the American fighting man. It really does. It's an excellent example of why this country is as great as it is. Today, also, in a little sadness, this is the day that Janis Joplin died.
Oh, she died young.
Yes, yeah, 26.
Oh, I didn't realize it was that young. Wow.
Yeah,
Was it
and
drug related or
overdose.
was it just OD? There you go.
OD. And then from the true crime perspective, this is the day that Larry Bell, okay, was executed. He was electrocuted. He actually chose the electric chair as opposed to being given lethal injection. Larry Gain Bell was a serial killer that was known for the fact that when he would kidnap his victims, he would taunt the family of the victims by calling them and telling them that, oh, you're going to find her soon. We're going to, you're going to have her. And had his first victim right at 19 years of age write out her last will and testament, and then he mailed it to the family.
Yeah. Do we know what
South
state?
Carolina.
South Carolina.
It was in South Carolina. And just a absolute disgusting human being. It just what he ended up doing to these people was just hard. His crimes went from May to June of 1985. There's anywhere from 2 to 4 victims. There's probably more, but he wouldn't. He had given like false information on a couple of things. But to have the victim write out a last will and testament.
Oh, that's just dark.
That girl, I'm sorry, was 17. It was 17 years of age. Shari Smith, who just was getting mail at the driveway, and then she was kidnapped by him.
And I know there's people that don't believe in the deep end, but there are circumstances where it just seems so appropriate.
Yeah, it just if you ever get a chance to read about this nasty scumbag, Larry Gene Bell, it's just frightening that this man existed, and he was a former Marine who actually was forced to leave the Marines because he shot himself in the leg while working on his gun in boot camp.
Wow.
But so he was executed on this day. His last words, Vin, he had no last words.
He didn't. Good.
So that's it in history for today. And now let's get to the Menendez brothers.
Right. So, and there was a big press conference yesterday, and I think this is how you have to preface it, because part of my belief today, I'm going to walk you through the process in my mind about the Menendez brothers going free, and I believe it will happen. It will happen. There's a hearing, I think, coming up at the end of November. It's because of who the DA is, and it starts with the DA in L.A. Gascon is his name. He was the DA in San Francisco. Then he destroyed that city, and then he went down to Los Angeles, and he is pretty much dismantling that city. And when I say that, I am a former prosecutor. I believe in law and order. I absolutely do. Yeah, there are second chances. Yeah, there has to be compassion in our system. But like when people are committing crimes, they need to do the time. We can't just turn the other cheek and let people in and out, and not prosecute. You talk to some of the folks out in LA, like the families of victims, and they do not like this elected district attorney. Prosecutors, career prosecutors in his office don't like him.
If I could just interrupt for 1 second, I said 26. She was Janis Joplin was 27.
27.
I'm sorry, I misread my notes here. She was 27, and that's that whole 27 mystique of that's what Jimi Hendrix was. That's what Jim Morrison was.
Jim Morrison.
That's what Brian Jones. So that's the mystique of 27 with regards to rock stars. So I apologize for saying 26. I misread.
But
okay. Going back to what you said about this prosecutor,
yeah,
I mean, look, being a prosecutor is a very difficult position, and you have to try to find the truth. You don't prosecute for the sake of prosecuting,
right?
And you do need to have sometimes some compassion with regards to same. And this
right, but don't you have to punish criminal? And I'm not talking about the Menendez brothers right now. I'm giving you the background on Gascon.
Right.
This guy does not prosecute criminals. He just doesn't. That is why he ran for district attorney. He has a whole different philosophy, which is completely disruptive. And the results you see, go to San Francisco where he created that, and now go to LA and see what he's done there. Talk to the career prosecutors, the men and women who go there because they believe in justice and they believe in punishing criminals and taking dangerous people off of the streets. That's not his modus operandi. He has a history, he has a reputation, and if you know it, you know it. So with him being the one in charge, that gives the Menendez brothers the greatest opportunity ever. Because if you've got people who, actually may have an argument about what happened at the original trial, my goodness, if any prosecutor or DA in this country is going to do whatever they can in their power to let the brothers go, it is this prosecutor, period.
That's a valid point, because he has commuted a lot of sentences. He's resentenced a lot of people.
Yes.
And I think it's like 300 or something like that.
Yeah.
But his point is that the recidivism rate of the 300 he resentenced was only 4. So he says that, the system does work. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying I agree on this case. Okay. But I do think that it is always important to have a prosecutor who has an open mind, and that you can show new evidence to, and that you can, bring that in front of him, because, that is really one of the quintessential aspects of our system. These guys the Menendez brothers could have been executed, and they certainly would have been executed. Like, they've been in jail for 35 years. They certainly would have been executed way before 35 years. Okay. And if there is evidence that comes out that would somehow have ameliorated what happened here with regards to sentencing or anything along those lines, it needs to come out. But it also, you mentioned about the deep end situation with regards to people that don't agree with the death penalty. This is why I get
the deep end. Let's calm down the language here. Call it the deep end, Al, because otherwise the folks at YouTube are going to take this video and quash it.
Okay, the deep end. Okay, so when you look at the deep end thing, and you see that there are people who, spend 60 years, 50 years, whatever, incarcerated and are then exonerated, you get very, very nervous about putting someone. Now, of course, this guy, Larry Gene Bell, no doubt about him, he deserved to go.
Right.
But the Menendez boys could have been gone if the deep end had actually been.
Right, but the jury didn't go there. The jury
didn't go there. Correct.
So let's start listening to what this is. A big press conference yesterday by Gascon. He's the prosecutor. He's got silver hair, glasses. Let's take a listen, and we'll go through it piece by piece, because there's a lot of aspects of this that need a little bit of a deep dive here?
First of all, I know that this is an area of tremendous interest nationally. We know, especially since the Netflix documentary came out, we're getting a lot of calls.
Okay, let's just start right there. The reason, well, first of all, let's take a look at the backdrop right now. He's in the middle of a very competitive race for re-election as DA. That's another reason I believe that the Menendez brothers will go free. Just like, I don't know if you remember what happened down in Maryland. With the case with Ahmed Syed, the original podcast, serial podcast case. And that prosecutor down there was actually under indictment and then went on her own and said, we looked at it again, and then set Adnan Syed free. Now, you may or may not believe he's free, but she sort of curtailed all of the obligations and processes in doing that. And it was a very political thing. It was a very public, a very political thing. DAs are also politicians, unfortunately, in a lot of states. Yes. Because they've got to run for election, they run for re-election. And that's and when that happens, when politics intersects with the law, that's when things happen that may not happen otherwise. He's under pressure right now trying to win re-election. He's being challenged because he sets a lot of criminals free. But there is this drumbeat now, public drumbeat, as a result of the Netflix. And everyone's talking about this again, Al.
It's been brought to the forefront. I know that the brothers were not particularly happy with the 9 episodes. I did watch all 9. We'll go over that in a little bit as to what I thought were, or what I would tell you were historical inaccuracies, which were not many, quite candidly, with regards to this. But, you know, when you've got somebody with the realm or with the popularity of Kim Kardashian standing up and saying these boys should be released, and, you know, I mean, that she is supporting that they get an opportunity to be released or a new trial or anything along those lines. These guys, politicians, one thing they need is they need support. They need people who are going to be advocating for them. They need people. We saw this with Taylor Swift. When you get somebody who is going to say, I support you, Kim Kardashian can bring in a lot of money to the coffers of anyone running for an election. She can give a lot of money to the coffers of anyone who's running for election. And if you're going to have somebody, you know, backing you with her media presence and everything along those lines, that helps. That helps big time. You know, and so, you know, that's that. And I see that, you know, we don't in New Jersey, our head prosecutors are not elected. They were appointed.
Right.
And so, you know, we don't have that issue here. But I see it in New York, and I've seen it in California.
Absolutely. I mean, well, and the thing with Kim Kardashian, I mean, her father was a lawyer, you know, represented OJ. She's a powerful force in LA. This is one of her issues, is criminal justice, and she has taken this on. I interviewed Rosie O'Donnell on my show. She's another one. She is advocating and beating the drum for this, saying 35 years is enough. 35 years is enough. And that's a constant a drumbeat. Kayla Nicole in New Zealand. Yay, my favorite podcast, watching here in NZ, 6 a.m. Great to have you aboard, Kayla, on this Friday. Also with us, 49er girl, screaming to free the brothers.
Whoa.
Free the brothers. And there's a loud drumbeat. And I get it. And I get it based upon what people are saying. So let's listen to a little bit more here.
Let me begin by saying, kind of walk you through a simple explanation of the legal issues here. There are 2 vehicles upon which people that have been convicted of a crime, well, there are many, but the 2 are a habeas and the other one's a resentencing. They can ask for a review of their conviction.
Sir, I'm sorry, just the thumping on the...
So, Al, just for clarification, we're talking about habeas, right?
Right.
They've all these issues that they're bringing up, I think, have been subject of their appeals.
Yes.
They've run out of appeals, but our system never ends. You can always make a motion. You can always attempt to have a judge look at it again. They don't have to. They're not obligated to, but they can. And it's a lot easier when you have the support of the DA. If you're all on the same page, now it's going to get a look. It's going to get a look. And this is a major development. Mystic Angel, thank you so much. So habeas is one route for this, and we've seen Scott Peterson attempt that over and over again. Another double red rum guy in California.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's okay. Thank you. Yeah. Under a in this case, we've gotten petitions for the brothers in both. Under a habeas, basically what someone that was convicted is asking a review of new evidence that had been made available. Had that evidence been available to the court and the jury at the time of the trial, perhaps the outcome may have been different.
Now this is interesting, right? And historically, Court TV covered the first trial. Cameras were permitted.
Right.
Then came OJ. We were covering OJ, but the judge in the retrial did not permit cameras.
Correct.
So we don't see it. We don't hear that trial. And there were rulings that kept out the evidence of the abuse at the second trial, which to me is a big deal. And it was probably a big difference in the case.
And there was, just so people know, the first trials were separate trials. Okay, so then
juries.
Right, well, separate juries. Exactly, that's what I meant. So it's like separate juries on that aspect. The second trial, they were tried together, one jury. So it was and
the evidence wasn't there. The evidence of the abuse was not permitted. It was so limited that it wasn't what the trial was about anymore.
Well, and I'll be honest with you. In the second trial, it almost became a battle of the attorneys. It was a scenario where you had the basically the prosecutor and then Leslie Abramson going at it constantly, and then Leslie Abramson going after the judge constantly and fighting along those lines. And I think it was somewhat dangerous, or I mean, the prosecution, I really walked a fine line on basically like even alluding to the fact that one of the brothers, Lyle, did not testify in the second trial, and that is an absolute infamia. I mean, you do not do that. You have a Fifth Amendment right not to testify. Okay, and the prosecution is not allowed to use that against you. And he really did come very close to basically just saying, hey, how come he's not up here?
Right.
You know why? Because he's a liar. Okay, so it really was more of a battle of personalities in the second trial, whereas the first trial really captivated a nation.
Oh, it did. And here's the way I'm looking at the second trial, right? Because we don't have it. We don't have it in our archives at Court TV. You can go to Court TV and watch the first trial. The evidence was limited. And for me, I want a fair trial. I want every trial to be fair. I want the jury to know more, not less. And I am shocked that the evidence was limited and it withstood all of the appeals that happened in the case, that despite all the problems with the second trial. And that's why this is in a funky place legally, because the arguments about new evidence that are being made is likely evidence that if it existed would have been withheld. The judge would not have permitted it in front of this second jury, which to me wasn't fair. So I'm not on board. The first trial I thought was fair. Let it in. Let that stuff in. Let the jury figure out what's going on here, because it's all about the mindset. They weren't saying they didn't do it. What they're saying is what they did was something less than red rum, right? And that's why I want to address what Rosa is saying here. Rosa, God is not religion. Wow. Rosa, God is not religion. That's interesting. That's another show. But can they sue for wrongful conviction if they are released? And the answer is no, because we're not talking about wrongful conviction here. What we're talking about is a potential resentencing. We're talking about new evidence that would reduce it from the top charge to something lower. But this is not exoneration evidence. This isn't evidence coming in saying you've got the wrong people, because they did it.
Right.
They absolutely did it. The question I think that's being raised now is, what was it, and was the punishment appropriate based upon everything? So I hope that answers your question, Rosa. Thank you so much. Well, let's listen to a little bit more here from Gascon.
And then there's a second process, and it's called resentencing under California law, where a prosecutor can evaluate whether someone has been rehabilitated, and based on their actions and the fact that they're not involved in criminal activity inside of the prison, that their sentence could be reevaluated. In this case, again, the Menendez brothers are asking for a review through both of those vehicles. We have not decided on the outcome. We are reviewing the information, but I think it's also important.
And this, again, I'm going through my process in my head here. We haven't come to a decision yet, and then he hits it with a but, which tells me I'm like reading his mind. They've come to their conclusion. I don't think you have this press conference if you don't believe you are going to recommend or do whatever you can as the DA to set the table for these two brothers to be released. Al, are you reading it any differently than I am?
No, I'm not reading it any differently. It does seem to me that, once he hit the situation with regards to rehabilitation, and that they've that's the catchphrase. Okay. I mean, let's remember, what was it, last year or earlier this year, Leslie Van Houten was released, and she was one of the murderers in the Manson
Red Rummers.
Right, one of the Red Rummers from the Manson family. Okay, so you have a scenario with regards to the fact that they believe that she had been rehabilitated, and quite candidly, she probably had been. She was a model prisoner. She worked with women there, and really did a lot of very, very good things. But she's still a Red Rummer. Okay, she still was involved in two cold-blooded murders with regards to a derelict of nut job family, but she's released now. Whether or not these two have but
wasn't her sentence life with the possibility of parole?
Well, no. What happened was that her sentence was the death penalty.
Was the D pen, Al? D pen, come on,
the D pen.
Al.
I'm sorry.
With me here.
The take two. Her sentence was the D pen. Okay, she was given that, and then California, the Supreme Court had held off, and they said that all of those sentences would now become life. And at that point in time, there was no real life without a parole. That became later on in the jargon of the prosecutors and amongst the intelligentsia, and then everything became life without parole. She was not under that, as is all of the Manson members.
Right.
But she did get out.
Right. Like so, but legally, she was in a place because of the way they dealt with the D pen in California, is that she had the opportunity to apply for parole.
Yes.
These two don't.
That's correct.
These two don't. It was life without parole. And here's my point. I want to make one other point about this, because people who argue against the D pen say, make them suffer, just give them life without the possibility of parole and throw away the key. And I say, there's a difference. There's a difference. And again, I'm not talking about this case, but in other cases, you sentence someone to life without the possibility of parole, then something like this happens, where all of a sudden we are talking about a DA who is going to take two defendants sentenced to life without parole. We throw away the key. They'll never get out, and they're going to get out.
Well,
okay.
But wait a minute.
No. This could happen to any criminal defendant who gets life without parole, which is what these two got. They have a chance. They have a chance, even if they are still guilty. They have a chance to get out. You get a DA like this, starts talking about rehabilitation. Suddenly, life without the possibility of parole becomes something different. Whereas if you're on the row, you're not getting off the row. That's the difference between those two sentences. So when the defense attorneys stand up in court, ladies and gentlemen, and say, just punish him, give him life without the possibility of parole, make him think about it for the rest of his life, he's thinking about getting out the rest of his life, which is what these brothers are thinking about. Whether it's right or whether it's wrong, I'm just giving you the truth about the difference between those two sentences. Life without parole is not always life without parole.
Okay, but let's be realistic. If new evidence comes out that would exonerate you, are you saying that they shouldn't get the opportunity? I'm not using, let's not use the Menendez brothers. Let's use anyone who is sitting on either death row or sitting with life without parole.
Deep pen.
The deep pen.
Row.
Row. On the row. And if you're on the row, or you are life without parole and new evidence comes in and that evidence exonerates you, then you can release those people, right?
Right. Anyone could be exonerated. This isn't an exoneration.
But it's not an exoneration.
Now you're missing the point.
No, what I'm trying to
I've got a DA who's saying, well, these guys who were sentenced to life without parole have been really good inside. So that's a reason to perhaps let them go.
No, I don't necessarily agree.
That's what he's saying.
But but they're also saying that there is new evidence that came that which had been used at the time of trial, not exonerate them, but it would have maybe softened the blow with regards to their conviction and sentencing. Okay, so there is a big difference than what you're saying necessarily. They are saying that, look, we've got something now that if this had been presented to the judge, may have changed the judge's mind.
That's one reason. That's the habeas.
Right.
The other reason is the resentencing under California law.
I understand that, but I'm saying that you can't use blinders and not see the habeas petition. Okay. And as a prosecutor, you have a duty to do what's right, not necessarily what's politically expedient. And sometimes they make decisions that people stand there and go, scratch their head, say, why did they do
new evidence? And well, he'll talk about the new evidence. He's going to get to it. I don't know if we'll ever get to it though, because we're slowly going through this. So I'll just say the new evidence is a member of Menudo accusing their father, and a letter written by one of the brothers to his cousin, right? That would help corroborate the test. The cousin testified about it.
Yes.
The cousin testified about it, but then there was a corroborating letter. That's the new evidence. It's not a new issue. It's the same issue from the first trial. The difference in the second trial was that the judge did not allow the same level of evidence in the second trial. And that was the difference. And somehow, some way, the California appellate courts all believed it was okay. I don't know if I agree that it was okay myself, but what they're doing is squeezing this thing through in such a way, and by throwing in, they've been good boys, trying to smooth it over. He's not going to be talking about them being good boys unless he is setting the table for setting them free. That's my point. By the way, thank you to Lisa Whitenauer. He is most definitely a defense attorney. Yeah, that's his perspective. That's why he ran for DA, to undo traditional prosecution, and it's an untraditional prosecution. But if the people of LA want that, they can reelect him. They absolutely can. They want to set more criminals free. And again, aside from this case, I'm just talking about what he does day in and day out versus this particular case, because this one is obviously different. Gringa showing some love for the tangents. Gen X, Frankie Figs in the chat, here, there, and everywhere. Thank you to Gen X. Frankie Figs, Jennifer Sube, our mod squad, getting it done every day. Let's get more of the DA, Gascon.
That we recognize that both men and women can be the victims of sexual assault. We started a consent campaign to be timed with the red zone. And for those of you who are not familiar with the red zone, is when new kids are going into college, and for the first time they're away from home. And we know that there's an increase in sexual assaults during that period of time. Now, most of the victims are usually young women, but there are men also that are victimized.
So I don't know what he's talking about here.
I don't know what he's talking about here either.
I do know that the Menendez brothers were not living at home at the time of all of this, because the youngest went off to college and got an apartment in LA. So he wasn't even living at home at the time. And to me, that's another problematic fact in all of this. We've got a lot of questions. Vinny, do you think they should be freed? So before we run out of time, Al, we can start talking about this. Here are my thoughts. And here's the biggest problem I have with the Menendez brothers is their mother, Kitty. If Jose is the monster, okay, if Jose is the monster, and, you know, whatever you're going through mentally and how you're dealing with him and fearing him and being unable to speak publicly about it because you are afraid of the monster, if the monster is living in that house, and then you eliminate the monster, why do you eliminate Kitty, the mom?
All right. There was, if I'm not mistaken, there was testimony that the mom was also complicit in either turning a blind eye, turning a blind eye to what was going on. If you remember, there were pictures that were shown with Jose with the boys in different stages of undress and things along those lines. It was in an envelope. The envelope was written on by Kitty. Okay. Kitty also was, they also accused her of having some sort of touching and things along those lines, them, that they also were abused sexually by her. Okay. So there
essayed.
Okay. There was essay accusations against her, which did not, you know, obviously in the second trial didn't come out, but there was comments about that. And there was comments even with regards to the psychiatrists that they spoke to that ended up doing these reports and things along those lines. So there was something there. Now, granted, I will tell you this. All right. Jose shot 6 times. Okay.
Yeah.
Kitty shot 10 times.
Yeah.
Right. That's disturbing. Okay. I mean, that in and of itself is disturbing. And that has always been a problem for me with regards to what these guys did. So, you know, 6 times and then you shoot your mother 10 times. If Jose,
so, you know, in homes, okay, let's acknowledge. Okay, I'll acknowledge and I will concede and presume that Jose's a monster, right? Jose's a monster. Let's just do that as a given in this scenario. Is Kitty a victim of him as well? Like, could Kitty actually stand up to him if he was that much of a monster to his children? Do we not think that he was controlling his wife the same way? And once you get rid of Jose, was there really fear that Kitty could do anything to them? What could Kitty do?
Take him out of the will.
Well, yeah, but then we're not talking. Then we're talking about red rum, right?
Right. But I mean, you said, could they do so? Could she do something? She certainly could. She could take him out. You know,
right. But is there the same level of fear of Kitty? Like, you're taking out the monster. Why are you taking out Kitty? Why are you taking out Kitty? I believe what you believe, which is it comes down to money. Once you take her out, number one, it's going to be clear who committed these atrocities, right? Right. So they're going to get caught. They can't cover it up. They can't say it was a mob hit. Number two, they're going to lose. They may lose access to all the money, whether it's insurance money, the family's incredible wealth. So to me, that, like, why did you have to take out? Like, I get the monster. I get that. To me, that's where I have a hesitation in taking it to the next step.
But if she has done essay on the boys, she's a monster too. Okay. Now, once again, what bothers me from this case from day one, okay, is that they never said this. I would have a different opinion on this case is if they went in, they did this, and then they turned around and said, we did this because we were, we were scared for our lives. They were abusing us, and there was, we couldn't take it anymore. And if they had gone in with that aspect of it, okay, it would have been a whole different thing. This whole defense thing came up, and this is brought out pretty well in the Netflix series, that Abramson has a almost like a recipe for dealing with cases where she's able to move it from M down to MAN, okay,
Right.
in verdicts by juries and things along those lines. She's got a very good playbook on how she handles that. And it was basically, you see in when David Kahn, who is the prosecutor in the second trial, saying that, look, they followed a recipe. I mean, this was concocted by Leslie Abramson. This was all set up by her. And what she did is she ran her playbook. She even followed, there was another book, which I don't remember which one he referred to, that said, dress them in pastels, do this, do that, lighten put glasses on Eric. He didn't wear glasses, and things along those lines to get them to be more like the preppy little kids next door, as opposed to, the type of monsters that they were being, accused of being. So, it was always a little weird to me that they didn't do this at the scene. They didn't call it in and said, we had to do this. They also set it up like it was going to be a mob hit. Right. There's no doubt about that.
There was planning to it. It wasn't an immediate like heat of passion, because they were watching a movie and eating ice cream. They basically got ambushed inside. That's just the fact of the case. And
one of the things that the series does wrong, that was determined not to be that way, is that they came in through the back, because the first shot hits Jose in the back of the head and not in the front. So they did not, Jose did not see who shot him. There's no way that could have happened based on what was the ballistic report that came on and the autopsy report. That was the first shot would have been that way, along those lines. And that's different in the series. The series shows them seeing and like, oh, what are you doing here? And that could not have possibly happened based on how the shots were fired. But
every 26 seconds, they need to sue Netflix for the egregious and false storyline of the brothers having a sexual relationship.
Okay, now the incest aspect of this series is questionable. Okay, it definitely is questionable. It is played to a certain extent. I mean, Eric is basically portrayed as either being bisexual or gay, along those lines. And I know he was interviewed by Barbara Walters, and he said, I'm not gay, but I understand what it's like to be essayed and this, that, the other thing, and that the prosecution portrayed me that way, to basically like kind of poo-poo the fact that a man could be essayed. Okay, so that was one of the arguments that had been raised in the second trial, the fact that they threw this out because real men would not be essayed. And that was unfortunate that the prosecutor went that way. And David Kahn, who I think just recently passed away, was very deliberate on making these claims like, come on, these are two athletes. These are two guys in great condition. How does a man allow himself to be put into that position? Come on, guys. Like that was the rah-rah that he was doing in the second trial. That really, so the jury is sitting there going like, yeah, you're right. We're not talking about two little, twinks. We're talking about two built guys who were high-level athletes.
Yeah. And I think where we are now is I think we realize that it's not necessarily a physical thing. It's more mental and psychological than anything. So, at this point, I'm especially with the Menudo guy coming forward and everything else going on. Yeah, the abuse happened. So the question now is, and again, for me, and thank you, Patrick, appreciate it. Thank you for watching. As 49er girl saying, that's because she allowed it. And I get that. I get the allegation that she is allowing it perhaps cheering it on, whatever, supporting it. But once he's taken out, it's not going to happen anymore. It's just not going to happen. Right? So why are they taking the next step in taking her out? And that's where I think things get a little murky. I get it. She's permitting it. She's allowing it. She may be cheering it on. She may be enjoying it. I don't know. But she could also potentially be a victim of Jose the Monster as well. And, you know, there was some discussion in the tapes with the therapist about the mother. And Lyle really said, I had to get permission from Eric, and talks about that. And then talks about how he really saw it as a sewer, you know, that mom was taking her own life. And that's the way he saw it. And I thought that was weird. That was weird to me. That was like trying to explain it in a way that maybe I can, rationalize it for myself, because I think there's a difference between Kitty and Jose. Not all people agree with me. But when there's a monster in the house, let's look at Jerry Sandusky. Do you see Jerry Sandusky and his wife the same way? I don't see her necessarily in a great light, because she turned a blind eye as well to what was going on. But I don't see them the same. And I don't know. Call me crazy. But
we'll call you CR. We don't want to, go after.
Look at Lisa. Lisa, this is thank you, Lisa, for sharing this. I was a victim of SA by a family member and was forced to be around said person by my parents. And I didn't commit red rum, and my dad was a cop. Wow. I mean, that's, there are a lot of problems with all this. It's been 35 years. 35 years is a long time. If this had been MS and not red rum, they'd be out already.
Yes.
So I think the question everyone looks at now is that we're looking at, is 35 years enough? I had one of the expert witnesses, Dr. Burgess, on my show. And I asked her point blank, I said, well, how would these two do if they got released? Would there be a danger to anyone else? Because that's the other part of it, right? It's all right. You were good while you're on the inside, but will the rest of society be safe? And she was convinced that they would be, that all of this was aimed towards the parents.
Right.
Do you think, Al, and I think this is an important question, do you think we look at this differently because the victims are the parents and not a stranger? Like if this had been done to someone else, it might be different. And it seems that the family wants them released as well. I think that helps as well.
It does, and it is definitely looked at differently, because it's matricide and patricide. So you look at it from the standpoint of that. Anytime you have a family thing, the chances of recidivism is demonstrably less than someone who will a stranger or something along those lines. The problem though with this case is, in my opinion, is the reloading, which was very difficult to watch. I mean, it really just shows this just malice that they had with regards to their parents. And it wasn't enough to go 6 times on Jose, 10 times on Kitty, because she was kind of moving. It shows
they were broken. They were broken, right? I mean, there's no question in my mind that Eric's the younger one, was a broken young man.
Yes,
he was not okay. He was not okay.
Like people, they were upset that Jose was very hard on them, that was very demanding of them. Remember, they had coaches that were testifying on behalf and saying that he was a lunatic in the stands and things along those lines, and he treated them horribly and were putting them down. I mean, the kids were basically ne'er-do-wells with regards to, you had Lyle screwing up at Princeton. Okay. And then interesting, so we have a New Jersey connection with him because he went to Princeton, but he also bought a restaurant in Princeton called Chuck's Spring Street Cafe, which dealt with specialized in wings.
Wing,
Buffalo
wingman.
wings. Yeah,
He
he
was
was
a
a big
wingman.
and so he had, after all this, he ended up buying a restaurant in Princeton, which did not last too long. But so he's got a Jersey connection, so that always makes it a little more.
Yeah, they were East Coasters until Jose and his business went out to the West Coast. Patrick Davis can't unalive innocent people, then release the guilty. I agree. That you got to look through it in that filter. But the question people are going to say, we're innocent people victims here, and that's where the rub comes. Here we go. Every 26 seconds, they should sue Netflix for portraying ingredients in boys having a sexual relationship. It is false and egregious. Opinion, Vinny. I think it's going to be difficult for convicted Red Rummers to sue for defamation, because the damage is damage to your reputation in the community. I don't know if your reputation could be any more damaged after you've committed Red Rum and been convicted of it. Which they have.
There was also testimony of SA between the boys, between Lyle and Eric, and that it was just going down, being passed down from the father to the son to the younger brother. So I do think that you're going to have to be kind of. I don't think that suit will go anywhere. If they did file it, I think they would be foolish to file it. But you never know. I mean, anyone can sue anyone, and anyone can file a lawsuit. So all you need is a lawyer, and you need 250.
You can file it, but to win a defamation lawsuit, you have to prove first of all that the statement is false and that you've been damaged. The other problem here is that at this point, I think they would be considered public figures.
They're absolutely public figures. Absolutely,
so you'd have to prove malice. So you'd have to prove that what they said was false, and they knew it was false, and it's created damage to their reputation in the community. Well, their reputation in the community is, I guess, the prison right now. Maybe it does damage the reputation in that community. I'm not sure. Eladia Lopez, they got their parents back, and the parents had power. I agree with you there, right? Children are always the children. Doesn't matter that they're 19, 20, 21, 22. The parents, especially someone like Jose, is always going to have the power in that relationship, psychologically and perhaps physically, because old man muscles, Al, I know Al, old man muscles somehow are just stronger. There's something that didn't happen to me, but my dad, never went to the gym, but my goodness, if he put his hand on my neck, and this wasn't in a bad way, I would ask for really intense massages on my neck, and the strength in my father's hands. The older he got, the stronger it got. And the guy never stepped foot in a gym. So there's old man muscles too.
My father was a lumberjack. Okay. He had literally was a lumberjack. Yes. That's what he did. We had a lumber company. That's what our William Wunsch and Son Incorporated was, a lumber company that opened up in 18.
Of course you did.
1861. Okay.
I wish Jonesy was here, because he'd be singing the lumberjack song right now.
And my father was a lumberjack. He had hands the size of butcher blocks. And I mean, it was, the worst thing was, if you did something wrong, and then I deal with mom, and it would be go to your room to think, and then dad would come home and do the thinking for me by basically just correcting me on my misthoughts. So the man was a big man, but this whole scenario here with regards to quibbling on facts with regards to the Netflix special and things along those lines. There's nothing here that is really, if anything, they should be the happiest two people in the world that this Netflix special brought them back to prominence.
Absolutely. And you heard it from the DA himself. He said, since the Netflix, they've been getting the calls. He's feeling the pressure from his constituents, right? Yep. So he's a politician. People voted for him. Some of the people voting for him saying, hey, take a look at this case. Take a look at this case. So he's taking a look at this case. This is an important comment here from Color Street Babe. Thank you so much. They were out of the house, off to college. If that's the case, how could the parents still be a threat to them? They should have just sued them. Well, I think the argument is is that they felt that if they outed him, they would have been destroyed. Whether it was they were fearful of outing Jose, both physically and then financially and every other which way, in terms of the father destroying their lives. In
Well,
many ways. It's a psychological hold, I think, that they are alleging here. But Color Street Babe, I get it. They're out. They are physically out of the house at this point.
But the interesting thing that the Netflix special shows is that Jose apparently had been essayed by his own mother, and that there was a history of that. The mother had been essayed by an uncle, okay, and then she passed it down to Jose, and then he passed it down to his kids. So there is that is brought up in the Netflix special. Whether or not that's true or not, I would imagine it's got to have some basis in truth that they would put it on there. And just so and we mentioned this on an initial tangent podcast we had done a while ago. I actually met Jose at a Duran Duran record release back.
Was he how physically big was he?
He wasn't. He was not particularly big. It was, he was. I wouldn't say he was even well built. I mean, he was wearing a suit, and so your shoulders are always a little puffier when you got the suit on. I met him because I was there with the agents for Duran Duran, and there was a whole bunch of pictures and stuff like that. And he was there because I forget which record label he was with at that point in time.
Was it RCA?
But it probably was RCA, but like Duran Duran had a thing through Warner and then RCA. It was like kind of a weird scenario on that. But all record producers show up to all different record things. Don't necessarily have to be the production company that they work for. So it was a big show in New York. Duran Duran played and things, and he was there, and I met him, for 2.5 seconds, and that was it. But I mean, not particularly dominating guy. I don't remember him having a real strong grip or anything along those lines that would have, offset me on that. But like you said, the dad muscles, especially dad muscles with their own kids, are there. You have that. You can, you've got that strength. And you see the strength that mothers have when they're put into a predicament. I mean, you see stories about a woman who pushes a car over because her kid's underneath the thing. You get the superhuman strength when you're dealing with your own kids because of that bond you have with your children.
But Kitty did not use it to protect her children.
No, she did not. And that is an absolute horrendous situation. But we see this more and more.
Yeah.
You see this more and more, and it's so sad that you don't have anyone that you can confide in. You don't have anyone that's going to protect you. And, there's nothing that a mother is supposed to be protecting her young. You see it in the animal kingdom, they do it. Okay. Why with human beings is that so difficult?
Well, and I just don't, I wasn't in the household, obviously. But I'm wondering if Kitty was also a victim of Jose. If he's that much of a monster,
well, she was
would the parenting really be a partnership there? Do you think the Sandusky house was a partnership, or do you think Sandusky sort of ran things? I think Sandusky did. I have to get this comment in now. Ashley Bouchard, I think it's very complicated. Absolutely. Not black and white. Absolutely. Clearly premeditated. Yes. But I think many people find it morally justifiable, so they look past it. Yes. Like jury nullification. I got the back and forth. Yeah, the premeditation is absolutely a problem here. They planned and plotted this. It wasn't spur of the moment, but what drove them to it, I think, is what people are looking at here. So what should happen here? Should they be given a chance? Well, I think they're going to get a chance. I think they're going to get the chance. Now, the only thing I think that keeps them locked up is if they run into a judge who wants no part of it. And that's the roll of the dice, right? Because a DA can do just so much that a judge has to put a stamp on all
correct.
Of it.
That's correct.
So you can convince the DA and he can support what you're doing, and it makes your case 10,000 times stronger, but you still need a judge. And to me, that's the only wild card in all of this. I think it's a done deal with Gascon. He is going to do everything in his power to put it out there to allow a judge to just sign off on it and set the boys free. We call them boys. They're men now. This is like a picture from 2017 or 2018. So, they don't dye their hair silver like I do, but they're no spring chickens.
Well, the problem that I see with regards to this is that, when is red rum allowed? Okay. When you're in a position of self-defense? Okay. And it's, it's you against the wall, and it's either you're taking him out or he's taking you out. And that's not what we have here. And that's what's the most troubling thing to me from a moral standpoint, because they could have picked up the phone and all of this would have been done. Said, listen, I am being SA'd.
But let's look at that for a second. Let's look at that in a second, because we're looking at it in 2024. Absolutely. But back in, the early 90s, society was in a much different place. And don't forget the jury breakdown. It broke down on gender. Men, send them away. Women, cut them a break. We believe them. Not send them home free, not guilty, but cut them a break. That's the way it was back then. Okay. That's the way it was perceived. And the people who would likely make a lot of the decisions back then about, are we going to pursue this case, not pursue this case, were men. So I think I understand that part of it. And I know we're looking at it through this, and it goes both ways. Like, we can look at the trial. If it happened today, likely much different results. You might even have a much different charge depending upon if it was this prosecutor originally. But if you go back in time, I don't know if they had gone public with these allegations, if anyone would have believed them.
If I'm not mistaken, I think battered woman syndrome started in 1977. So there was a cognizance of this situation of a family member being put into a position where they ended up having to do something.
These are young men.
Right.
But between young men and women.
But what I'm saying is that
we're not understanding, I think, until years later. That's what I think. I don't know. Marzi girl from your New Jersey Turnpike, exit 10, Al. Exit 10. Bucks County, PA girl. Fantastic. I don't think we need to listen to any. I think everything that he said we've covered, which is good, because we're slowly running out of time. So let's get to make sure we get through all the comments here. Vicky Thomas, Vinny, the mother is complicit and both SA'd them. Let them go free. And I get it. I just, again, do we see the parents as partners? Is there anything else to indicate that the mother, because we've got outside indications from the Menudo accuser that Jose acted even outside of his own home. Anything that the mother was doing this? Because if the mother is a victim of Jose as well, I don't know.
Okay, so let's, if I just to interrupt, if in the Netflix special, it shows that he was a philanderer. He was, having affairs, and Kitty was aware of these affairs and actually throws it in his face in a number of situations. And that is a form of mental abuse that is being, perpetrated upon her. But it also shows Kitty sitting in her psychiatrist's office saying how much she hates these kids, and that they're an anchor around her neck, and that they're holding her back and they're holding her down. She was a former beauty queen in her youth. Okay. And then that was it. Then she, all of a sudden, she lost her individual identity and she just became Jose's wife. And then she had these kids that didn't seem to appreciate anything. There's a scene in this show where they're buying him a sports car, Lyle, and he's all upset because it's not the sports car he wanted. And that it was a ridiculous, like, how dare you do this? You're insulting me, and things along those lines. And so these kids were spoiled brats, and she had a lot of animus towards them. based on that. So it's
all right. Breaking news. I've got some breaking news, Al. I've just posted a poll in the community part on my page, on my YouTube page. You got to go to YouTube to vote. On YouTube, you can go to the community section and vote. Should we set them free or lock them up? Set them free or lock them up, the Menendez brothers. We'll see what people are saying. Vicky Thomas, let's take a vote. So we're going to take a vote, Vicky. We're going to do it. We're doing it right now. Let's do it.
Okay. All right. So I'm seeing comments that are people saying, well, you know, that's only a movie. Well, I will tell you this, folks. Okay. I watched the movie and I compared it and I looked at things historically that went on with regards to that trial. There's some stuff that they didn't cover, which probably was due to time constraints and things along those lines. But the amount of information that is put into this 9-part series,
right,
that could be demonstrably false, is very minimal. Believe it or not, it's very minimal. I mean, the fact that they shot that Jose was hit in the head, for the back of the head as opposed to the front, that's one thing that is wrong. The alibi situation that they bring up about the fact that they went to the movie theater and they kind of argued with the person because they needed to get the earlier movie ticket as opposed to the later show, so that they would have some argument as to where they were. That probably didn't happen because the alibi was basically null and void from almost the beginning of this case. So that situation was not, you know, I guess, I don't even know why they did it, but they did do that. That's not necessarily correct. The incest aspect is questionable, but there was testimony that that Lyle abused Eric. So there was something along those lines. And in the cross-examination, when Eric screws up and says about the purchase of the handguns, okay, which was only days before the nugs. Right. Okay. So when the nugs were purchased for the purposes of protection and then the purpose of basically red rumming the family, they show that the Bozanich doing the cross-examination of Eric, and that was not correct. And Kuriyama was the attorney, was the prosecutor who was doing that cross-examination, and that was a significant point in it. What they don't talk about is in the second trial, Bakari, who is the expert in the case hired by the defense, got in a huge amount of trouble for erasing passages and rewriting passages in his notes because it didn't fit the theme of the case. And he said it was at the direction of Leslie Abramson, and Abramson was brought up on ethics charges as a result of that, and so was Bakari. And for 3 years, that was being debated. Eventually, they decided not to pursue it any further. But there was a 3-year investigation as to some things going on, and Bakari was suspended and then had his license revoked. Okay. Also, the situation with, and we didn't even talk about this, but the situation with regards to their therapist basically telling everything.
Yeah, that was crazy. That whole thing was crazy. The fact that their therapy sessions became evidence in the case was bizarre. Al, I want to work through the rest of these comments quickly.
Just so you know, just so that therapist, okay, was eventually, his license was thrown out. Yeah. It was revoked because of the fact that he violated the patient privilege.
And that's how they got caught. That's how they got caught.
But see, like, that's just it though, Vin. Like, I don't understand how that did not spark some sort of a retrial or some sort of an issue in the appellate division, that there was a problem here with that. And that
California, man, it's not. There were a lot of problems with the whole thing, but they did do it. Like, they did do it, but you know how they got the evidence that they did it, to me, is also another problem. All this. Lisa saying, "I've never had anyone stand up for me, but I learned to deal with my stuff on my own." Our thoughts are with you, Lisa. That you're so strong through all this. Big thank you to Becca WI. I'm presuming in Wisconsin. I'm just going to say Becca in Wisconsin. I think that's what we're talking about here. By the way, go to the community page and you can vote on this, whether you believe they should be set free or lock them up, the Menendez brothers. Al, we broke 4,000 here in the middle of the day on a Friday. 4,000.
Excellent.
We're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, X, and Twitch. Please like, and subscribe if you're here for the first time. And don't forget, folks, to share on Facebook. And Sleepy Tombs today. Vinny Politan, absolute rock star. Thank you, Sleepy Tombs. I always wanted to be a rock star. Al was the actual rock star. I wasn't. I was a DJ. So, but
I am the DJ.
These days, DJs are rock stars. More from every 26 seconds. No, Al, I told and got taken for 1 week, then got sent back home, and I'm female. You got it, Al? You got it?
Wait. What was that? What's that comment again? I'm sorry.
No, Al. That's the only part I definitely. No, Al. And I told and got taken for 1 week, then got sent back home, and I'm female. So they weren't believing people back in the day. That's the problem. They weren't being believed back in the day.
And look, that is a tragedy, and that is a travesty, and that is a horrendous scenario. And I agree 1,000%. Then maybe we have to relook at the sentencing on these individuals, and not only them, but other people. And
yeah,
look,
I'm not against it. By the way, I'm not against it being set free. I want a further probing at this hearing in November. I want them to probe the kitty issue. Okay. And I think Gascon should do that. I think part of whatever happens in there is he should bring up the kitty and not just conflate Jose and Kitty. Don't automatically assume that they are one. Let's probe and get a little more detail into all of that. And I think that should be part of the process here. Ashley, do you think them testifying about their abuse helped shift the way we look at male SA as a society? I know people then thought it impossible. That is obviously not true. When did that change? I think this started to change because it was a national discussion. It was a national discussion. I don't think men were convinced because I think the court of public opinion was the same as that jury. But I think it did start things. I think it started the conversation at a minimum.
Well, I that's covered in Netflix series also, and you have Dominic Dunn, who's set for Vanity Fair, who was covering the trial, and he starts off initially he doesn't believe them, then he watches Lyle testify, and he was so moved by that testimony that he came in and he actually apologized to Leslie Abramson and said, listen, you know what? I was wrong. But then you find out that Lyle is going on the phone and talking to his so-called girlfriend who's recording all of his conversations and saying that, I had them eaten out of the palm of my hands, and that all these things that ended up becoming the confessions of Lyle Menendez, a book that came out. And that came out right before the second trial, where all of a sudden now that's why Lyle couldn't testify, because they would have used that book and they would have beaten him with that badly, because in it, he just started crowing about how great of an actor he was in this, and how he had everybody there believing him and everything. And he did. He had everybody believed him after his testimony. His testimony was magnificent with regards to that. And if you go in and then you say, my fingers were crossed and I was doing this and doing that and everything else, it's lies. And that's the problem.
Well, you could also say that he wanted to sort of downplay the essay because he's speaking with a woman and he doesn't want to feel like, there's a potential explanation. Every 26 seconds, though, Al, back to you. No, Al, I told and got taken for 1 week, then sent home to continue the essay till I moved out. So, that was then. This is now. We're in a different place now, and I think that's the prism we got to look at this. I just got to get through all these.
Okay, but let me just say quickly to respond to that, since it was directed at me. Okay, you did not red rum anyone. Okay, you did not red rum anyone. So kudos to you. I'm sorry that happened, but that makes you a better person from the standpoint of you didn't take retaliation out with regards to, you did the right thing by going to confess about it and talk about it, and they did the wrong thing, but you did not then take a shotgun. So
All right.
God bless.
And by the way, I think people are trying to vote in the chat. But the YouTube vote right now is 70-30, set them free. That's where public sentiment is in the chat, on the stream right now with all of the viewers and commenters. Once again, folks, thank you so much. We broke 4,000 today in the middle of the day, which is that's a big number. That's a big number in the middle of the day. Green-eyed PI, the letter, the Menudo witness and therapist, new trial. I don't think we need a new trial. I think a resentencing. I think you just look at it. You have a hearing. You have the evidence put in. I think you need to hear from both brothers. Need to testify. They need to be cross-examined, but they need to testify. And I think based upon all that, a decision could be made by a fair judge. So let's see how this plays. November 29th, they're going to be in court. I believe they will be set free. I absolutely believe they should be set free. I want to hear just a little bit more before I'm fully convinced to advocate for them being set free. And you know my thoughts about that. For me, it's always been about Kitty. It's always been about Kitty. I just want to hear a little more from the brothers themselves under cross-examination about Kitty.
There was a comment been free Phil Spector. He deserves to be free. Phil is free, folks. Okay. Because Phil's dead. So that's not, don't write any letters to the parole board on behalf of Phil. He's no longer behind bars.
And Marissa J says, have Dr. Ann Burgess evaluate them. Yeah. And that could be part of this. That could be part of the hearing. Have an evaluation.
I don't even know if you need that because quite candidly, I agree with you. There's no issue that they red rum their parents. So it's not like, we found a new suspect or something along those lines. The issue is whether or not the sentence was correct. And that doesn't need a new trial. And I don't know how you would do a new trial at this stage of the game anyway. And from a civil standpoint, that's the last thing the state of California would want to do.
If it goes to, hey, a new trial, then it's in the hands of the prosecutor and he'll say, no new trial, set him free. Okay. Because I don't believe there'll be a new trial. I believe if the result of this hearing is the judge sets it down for a new trial, then I think the prosecutor will make a motion to time served, move on, it's over. So to me, I think it'll be a resentencing. Maybe they somehow transform this into, okay, the possibility of parole, or maybe the judge on his or her own can sentence them. California is really funky with this stuff. Set them free. Why? Give me your reason, Vinny. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying I don't have a problem with it. If in fact there's an explanation and they are completely victimized and there's some compelling reason. And the one reason I would have is that the second trial didn't allow as much evidence as the first trial.
Yeah, the second trial is a problem.
And that's where I have a problem. And and it's not just this case, in all cases, on both sides of the aisle, I am always advocating for the jury to hear more, not less, to get a full picture of what happened and what the circumstances were. And I think there was some things that happened in second trial. For me, there was no reason for the second jury to not hear everything that the first two juries heard, but they didn't. Things changed, and I find that a little problematic, if not a lot problematic. Not because I feel sympathy towards the boys who are men now, but because the way I look at all cases is more evidence, not less. Al, we got to go. We got to go. I'm literally out of time here. The M Brothers situation highlights the history of present raping system. Justice is the harvest. Justice is the harvest. Thank you so much. Can you pronounce who these people are, Al?
No.
It looks very historic. This Sacerdotisa Noemi Portadora della Victoria.
That's my maiden name.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you to everyone. Thank you to Gen X. And I know we couldn't get to a ton of comments. We had a lot to talk about here today, but we ran out of time. I'm on a time limit, but we broke 4K today. Any final words, Al?
I would encourage you to watch the Netflix series. It's very well done, and as I said, there are very minimal things that were not accurate. And watch me on Closing Arguments with Vinnie Politan every Monday night from 8 to 9. And you can get me on X at Legal Weapon 3. And, as you know, on YouTube, I do respond to your comments, good, bad, and indifferent. But I'm always there to let you know. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And we're hoping the strike will be over so we can get Jonesy back. And that's it, Vin.
That's it. All right. Don't forget to watch me tonight, 8 o'clock, Closing Arguments, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. is then Vinnie Politan Investigates. Obviously, I think we'll be talking about this. We may be talking a little Diddy. There's a whole lot of things happening here that we're going to get to. So at this point, thank you so much, Gen X, Frankie Figs, Jennifer Sube, our mod squad, everyone who watched, and of course, all the super chatters and all the great comments. Again, it was a busy day today. I wish we had more time, but we don't. Say goodbye, Jonesy.
Goodbye, Jonesy.
And our consent.
Vinny and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast. Vinny has the blue eyes, out cracks the jokes. Jonesy stays behind his shades, entertaining all the folks. It's Vinny and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast. Load up all your comments, hit those super chats. Let's go smash that like button, so we can all have a blast. Vinny, Allen, Jonesy on the job. They're the Sugar Hill gang of true crime. They're telling stories of days gone by. They take crime and turn into a good old time. It's Vinny and the Tangents, True Crime Podcast.